have a member of our community on today's episode. We're going to call her Kayla. She's going to be sharing her story. Kayla is a woman of faith. Part of her story is sharing when she realized that she didn't need to listen to what her pastor said or people at her church, that she could develop her own relationship with God. If you're not a woman of faith, if you're agnostic or atheist, her story will still relate to you. I don't know why modern Christianity has taken this stance that the quote-unquote other people are dangerous, but refuse to see that maybe someone living in your own home is really dangerous. But the scriptures are really clear about this. Here's 4 that might help. Proverbs 22:3, the prudent see danger and take refuge. So that means that we should separate ourselves from dangerous people. 2 Corinthians 6:17, therefore come out from among them and be separate, says the Lord. Touch no unclean thing that I will receive you. They're talking about somebody who lies to you, somebody who is exploiting women. Matthew 10:16, I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves, therefore be as shrewd as snakes and innocent as doves. That's talking about strategy, and you can learn more about what strategies we recommend by enrolling in the Living Free workshop. Get more information about that at btr.org/livingfree. And John 16:13, the Spirit of truth will guide you into all truth. It's obvious that God wants us to be safe and that He loves us. And the fact that clergy or anyone else is interpreting scriptures in order to oppress us, that's spiritual abuse. And Kayla's going to share her story. So welcome, Kayla.
I'm glad to be here.
So let's start at the beginning. When you first met, did you recognize his abusive behaviors?
Well, no. From the start, he carried himself as a complete gentleman. We worked at a Fortune 500 company together. When we met, we were seeing other people, and he never overstepped boundaries while we were in another relationship. And that actually drew more respect for me, making me believe that he had values. He appeared to be everything I wanted: handsome, courteous, church-going family man. We had a lot of same interests: new restaurants, bowling, cruising. His family loved me. My family loved him. He put me on a pedestal. And of course, I loved it. It felt like we had it all and we were meant to be each other. So I painted this picture of him like this church going man with a character. I couldn't see him for who he was. His behavior was kind of subtle, like lack of financial understanding or miscommunication. And I just kind of attributed to um, his upbringing or him being a man or the stress of when we did get married, a brand new home. And within 2 years, we had 2 children. So 3 to 4 years into our marriage, I wasn't feeling the connection anymore. And I was trying to improve our relationship. I tried having deep conversations with him, but he often fell asleep or said we can talk later, but later never came. And he just had this tendency to not follow through. And he was having this trouble not only at home, but also at work. He was an IT person, and when he wasn't going to his customer's desk to help them, he would fall asleep. When he went to do his work, he made mistakes. When he had to write up the write up of what he did, he forgot to do it. A lot of times it went missing. He didn't follow through. So he was getting to the point at work where they were putting him on probation because he was sleeping on the job, because he wasn't doing his job. And the same things I was seeing at home: not following through, falling asleep in the middle of a conversation. So it's what led me to say, maybe you need to get in a professional evaluation.
Okay, so you're thinking, let's see if something's wrong. Just hearing this part, I'm wondering if the reason he wasn't paying attention was because he was doing stuff late at night where he wasn't getting a lot of sleep and distracted with the double life he had going on. That's my prediction. So we'll talk about it a little bit later. Okay, so he gets diagnosed.
He was diagnosed with ADD. He got on ADD medicine, and that seemed to help him at work. I didn't get the benefits at home. Even though he claimed to be taking a second pill when he got home, I didn't see the benefits of the follow through, the discipline, the focus at all. I thought his forgetfulness, his lack of follow through, his emotional distance were all symptoms he couldn't fully control. And I just felt I needed to be patient and supportive. Like I set times, let's talk every night at 9 o'clock. Let's talk about our feelings. Let's talk about our relationship, our finances. But most of those conversations, I was left feeling empty and unimportant. And yes, we sought out counseling. We went to yearly marriage conferences with our church. We went to a pastor for advice and support. I suggested and we attended couples therapy to help our relationship. I met with the therapist, he met with the therapist, and we met together once a month. We paid over $7,000 for a 13 weeks Christian transformation sessions. And besides, we were the president of the marriage ministry, helping others with their marriage. I did a lot of personal reflection and improvement. I took the time when he came home, that first 30 minutes, let him be to himself. I remember coming home from the marriage conference, learning that our bodies were not ours and we should meet our spouse's sexual need whenever they ask. I tried it. And without the emotional connection, I felt hollow, used. I just couldn't do that.
Right. Nope.
I read books like Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus, How to Have a Healthy Marriage. Our marriage vows before God made it harder, I think, for me to really see the truth because I was deeply rooted in the idea that my marriage covenant was sacred and unbreakable. So it kept me focused on holding the relationship together at all costs. So I stayed with prayer, effort, patience, while my ex husband really didn't seek to improve. And I just kept praying and putting the effort in. And I don't know anyone who has put more effort into trying to hold their marriage together. I just did a lot to try to hold our marriage together.
When did you start realizing that all of this concerted effort was not working?
Wow. So we attended this 13 weeks of extensive Christian transformation marriage sessions. And it required that we work on different aspects of our marriage every night. So we met in the weekly sessions. We had sessions directly with the Christian coaches, and we did something at night.
Was there any abuse education at all as part of this intensive?
Now, it was all about seeking God, praying for your spouse, building your spouse up, looking at things different.
So there was no abuse education whatsoever.
None at all. So we were talking every night. He started to come to bed, which you were alluding to. Many nights he did not come to bed. He stayed up all night long. And so things started feeling better, so much so that I believed that we had reached a good place. But
Okay.
then things started happening again. I started feeling disconnected, and I went to him for some tweaks. And instead of him trying to understand what I was feeling, what I was thinking, he started deflecting and minimizing and started talking about he didn't feel love. And I put my feelings aside and I asked him, send me an email to why you don't feel love. And what would it look like for you to feel love? So he emailed me a letter. And in this letter, he wrote things like, I would like for you to serve me a plate of food and bring it to me. After sex, I want you to get me a cold drink. I want you to dress provocatively for our nights out. And I was just floored.
Mhm.
He wanted me to do his chores that was his responsibility in the house, like taking out the trash, pulling the cans to the street. And that letter, I just realized I didn't know this man who I was married to. And I realized that it had to do more with sex and removing his responsibilities in the house more than me showing love to him.
Right.
And that's when I realized something is desperately wrong. And then I went back to our therapist and I said, I want to ask him about watching porn because early on in our marriage, porn had came up. I caught him looking at it and he said, oh, if you don't want me to look at it, I won't look at it anymore. And I believed him, but didn't believe him. So what I mean by that is every now and then I would check his computer, I would check his phone. Nothing was there at all. But in that therapy session, when I asked the question, he looked down. His face looked like flooded with shame, almost in tears. And he admitted the truth that he was addicted to porn and had been since he was a teenager, and rationalized it in his mind that it was okay because he wasn't touching a woman in the flesh. It was at that moment I realized that all the work I had been doing, it didn't matter. All the work that my therapist had been doing to build our relationship only worked in a healthy relationship. And I realized we didn't have one because for 24 years, he had been watching porn, and later to find out so much more than porn, but he had been watching porn all day long, he said.
And all night long.
All night long.
Was my prediction accurate? That's why he was so tired and distracted?
Your prediction is 100% correct. He was up really late at night, and one of my complaints was, why don't you come to bed? And he would say, I'm not sleepy. And when I do come to bed too early, I can't fall asleep. I just lay in bed.
Says the man who's falling asleep all the time.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so when he tells you he's been using porn, it's not the whole truth at this point. Is he identified as a sex addict or a porn addict?
He did identify himself as a sex addict, but really it was that moment. That moment when I realized the extent of his betrayal. Just to paint the picture for you, I never thought that he could deceive me, especially not in that way. So everything about us changed, and I realized that I needed to rely on God. So my prayer just became, God, uproot what's in me, what's in my ex, what's in my marriage that's not of you. God, give my ex-husband what he needs to be disciplined, focused, and to change. And if he's not going to put the work in, do not let me move forward until you've made it clear that he's changed and have repentance of the heart. I was so messed up in the head from the fact that he had deceived me. I had to rely on God. But even then, like, I just would have never thought it could be more because we did almost everything together. He didn't hang out. We went to work. He came home. He went to church. He came home. But he was manipulating things. So his phone, he was going in incognito mode. On the computer, he was going into private browsing. When he was going to the store, he was going to a sex massage parlor, or we were on vacation finding a street prostitute. I just had no idea that any of this was going on. I asked him to go into a recovery program. He started SA, but he was only going once a week just to say he was going. He wasn't doing any of the work. I then joined Infidelity Survivors Anonymous. I did speak to someone in the group privately, and she recommended that I receive a full disclosure and a polygraph test because there might be more than porn going on. And that's what prompted me to eventually ask him the question if he had sex with anyone during our marriage, under the certainty that he would then have to take a polygraph test. That's when things started becoming a little bit clearer because my ex was so covert. I kept saying, my ex just has ADD. My ex would never do that to me. He loves me. He's trying. I was still making excuses for him in my head.
I wouldn't say you're making excuses per se. I think you're still resisting the abuse because safety is always women's top priority. You've been trying to get to safety this whole time. You're trying to get to emotional safety. You're trying to get to psychological safety. You're doing this through getting his ADD diagnosis, through going to counseling. These are forms of resistance to abuse. You really are safety focused this entire time.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're in denial, it's that you're trying to get to safety with the information that you have at the moment.
Yes.
So you can let yourself off the hook. You only knew what you knew at that time.
Right. At that moment, I thought he only had a porn addiction. And I would have put my hands on the Bible that he never touched another woman. So when we had our therapy session and I asked him the question, knowing that he was going to have to take a polygraph test, and he said yes, my brain left my body. Like, I felt the abuse instantly. It was like, what just happened? How could he have been pretending to be this man of God, this deacon at church, this church school teacher, all this time telling me how much he loved me and that he was trying to do better? It made everything that I was thinking, that he was gaslighting me or deflecting and minimizing, and he was telling me that, oh no, that's not what's happening. Oh, you're misinterpreting that. It made everything true for me. He had not only been emotionally abusing me, but financially abusing me because he was going to these massage parlors and street prostitutes. Um, I remember going to my therapist and saying to her, he's deflecting, he has cognitive distortion, he's selfish. And at this point, she agrees with everything. And I said, when I looked this up, it says that this is all abuse. And she's like, it is. And I was shocked. Like, why didn't you tell me this? And she said, well, I was treating him for these things in the hopes that I can help him get to the place where he can set goals and work the goals and be the person that you were trying to get him to be.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That is so like insane to be like, I knew he was abusive. I had a therapist say the same thing to me. And I was like, it would be better if you said I didn't know than to say I knew and I didn't tell you because I thought I could change an abuser who was also lying to me is like wild. That's really, really, really crazy.
It was crazy because I was doing any and everything. And it had got to the point where I was saying to her, like, when I walk into my house, I feel bad energy. I'm not happy at home. Like, I feel like running, I feel trapped. And now I'm finding out, like, there's a clear reason why I felt that way because of what was really going on. And like you said, I was seeking safety and I didn't even realize I was seeking safety. I didn't realize how much confusion I was under. I didn't realize the person that said they would love me and take care of me for life was the one that was hurting me the most.
And deceiving you on purpose. And that is so, so painful when we can finally kind of wrap our heads around it. But it's so difficult to perceive of that. It's just like mind bending.
Yeah. So I had to make the decision of what to do now. And it took me a minute. My brain was still confused. I was still going back. No, he would never do that. Oh, no, he's a nice guy. Oh, no, but he cried at our wedding. So I just needed him to leave my space in order to be able to get clarity. What is really going on? I asked him to leave the home, to give me that space to do the research, to listen to podcasts, to do my reading, to really understand who he was and what he had been doing all along. So I found BTR, this podcast, and you talked about betrayal trauma. And basically, that's what I was going through, right? And that's when I did start listening to the BTR podcast, and it was like a aha moment, like listening to women tell their stories and like, oh my goodness, that's me. Oh my goodness, yeah, I felt that way. It just confirmed like everything that I was thinking and feeling and understanding why other people couldn't see it, right? Because he was Mr. Nice Guy. Everyone loved him. He walked on water. And even though I'm telling people what he's doing, what he's did, they couldn't see that. They couldn't hear me. And how I felt alone, like even with my friends. Um, but listening to BTR, it was like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. There's a reason why people don't understand it. It's all a part of the facade. It's all a part of the abuse, the intentional abuse, to keep the two separate, to make sure they think I'm the perfect person because I will need them to support me at some point. So the help that I got by listening to BTR is just knowing that I wasn't alone and everything that I was feeling was real. It was all real. But even with all of that, I still said I would stay in this relationship if I can see that he repented. And I just continued to pray to God. And eventually I got the clarity that he was not going to change. This was who he is. That person that I was trying to go back to, who I thought I was marrying, really didn't exist. He is this person here. I need to really admit that this is who he is. And all these years, I've just been under emotional, financial, and sexual abuse. And that was hard to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
But once I got there, once I got the that peace from God that this is really what's going on, that's when I was finally able to say, I want a divorce. I think the biggest thing why it took me 24 years to realize I was being abused. Right? As much as I knew something was wrong, as much as I was stressed out, as much as I was feeling like I was carrying the weight of the family financially, as much as I knew that I was carrying that weight, I just thought is what a wife do, right? Stand by her man. I didn't know about covert passive aggressive behaviors, and that's what he was doing. I didn't realize that I was having these like thousand little cuts, and he was giving me these little band-aids to prevent the bleed out. Because everything he did it under the pretense of it was not my intention to hurt you. I'm so sorry. I love you. It hurts me when you don't smile. We had a cycle of highs and lows that ironically strengthened the emotional ties that I had to him. And I clung to moments of kindness or affection, believing that was an indication of change in his behavior. I think also because of the good guy persona, right?
Mm-hmm.
I also wondered what was wrong with me. It appeared to me that overall I had this good man who went to work, who went to church, who loved me, and just struggled with connection and consistency. But that's because of the ADD. He wasn't intending to hurt me. And as this loving, supportive wife, it's my job to support, help him, even if I'm drowning. Also, just doubting myself. Like everyone on the outside saw him as this perfect man. He had a reputation and everyone loved him. Like he was kind, charming, funny. And I didn't see that complete person in my home, but I allowed the confusion to trump how I felt by how others was viewing him. And it caused me to question my own perception, leading to just more confusion and self-doubt. But I think one of the bigger things was my faith. We were the presidents of the marriage ministry, and we were consistent churchgoers. And we were conditioned to prioritize forgiveness, patience, harmony over our own well being, which made it really difficult to recognize this here is abuse. It's not two people trying to make a relationship work. But when you go to people and they say to you, just pray harder, what's your part in this? And you constantly keep saying, well, I need to do this because I made a commitment before God. All those things makes it hard to see the abuse for what it is because no one brings up the word abuse because it's not physical. And also, it's a lot of little things over time that I didn't realize. Um, you know, this may sound really crazy. I am closer to God than I've ever been right now because I realized the difference. I was committed to the church, to the religion, but I needed to build my own relationship with God and hear God for myself and not hear other people's interpretation of what he was saying to me. I was listening to the preachers when they say divorce is not an option. The Bible doesn't say divorce is not an option. I needed to get in God's face and to understand what he was saying to me and not what other people thought it should be. My mom passed away from COVID in April of 2020, and
I'm
I was
sorry.
crushed.
Yeah.
I fell on my face and I couldn't get back up. For it felt like years. Like losing her left a void. When I fell on my face in my marriage, it was different. I got back up so much faster, but the damage felt so much worse. Why? Because I realized through the grief that God is my comforter, that He's my strength, and that He's my everything, and that I need to rely on Him and not anyone else. And even though I lost friends, I lost my church, I had God to help me through this process, the healing process. So I look at it differently, meaning that I have my own personal relationship with God, not depending on other people' interpretations.
A lot of women describe that time of being faithful, but feeling like God cared about the marriage or God cared about your husband, but he didn't care about me, kind of a feeling. And then realizing that God loves you and he really cares. He wants you to be safe. It's such a different place to have that relationship just with God, caring about how you feel, than thinking that God doesn't care about you unless you check off all these boxes.
100%. I did go through that feeling. I felt it when I lost my mom. Like, how could you do this, God? With this situation, I felt it again. God, what did I do to deserve this? Right. And I had to realize that He didn't want me to feel like that. But on the other side of it, I said, you know what? God gave me two beautiful children from this. God loved me. God protected me while my ex was out there sleeping with prostitutes and paid sex workers at massage parlors. He protected me. Um, God gave me the strength to be able to walk away from that marriage. And even more so, God took my life and He allowed me to align with Him. And as much as my ex did to me and the pain that he caused me, he's in a worse situation than I am in. Like, I have found peace in God. I know that I'm loved by God. I know that I'm a better person, even though I went through that. I'm a stronger person now. I'm more determined now. I understand where my strength comes from. I understand where my peace comes from. The intuition that was happening throughout our marriage that I was getting constantly,
Mm-hmm.
not having all the pieces together, I understand it now. I understand that was God talking to me the whole time. And I didn't put all the pieces together. But now, moving forward, I learned to trust my intuition more because I know that's God talking to me. And I know that God loves me. And I know that God is going to give me all that I lost in those years with my ex, through the pain with my ex, in the finances with my ex, that He's going to give all that back to me. I know that everyone that listens to your podcast may not worship God, but I want everyone to trust your intuition. Trust what you're seeing more so than what you're hearing. I listened to the words and I didn't really watch the actions. Watch. How do you feel? Because no matter what their attention is, how do you feel? What's the impact to you? Because you're important. And if you're getting the impact, doesn't even matter the intention. Do the research. It was the research that made things a lot clearer for me when I was in this place of going back and forth, not my ex, not mine, not mine, that made it clear. And the confirmations would just come. I would read something in the book and then I would see him do it. I was always taught what happens in your home, in your marriage, you don't talk about, But if you're seeking help and you find someone to help you make sense of things, I would advise you to have that conversation. Because when I finally did, she had so many answers for me. She had been through something similar. She understood the abuse. And it was the only place that I really got the clarity of what this abuse looked like. So trust your intuition.
I love that through this process, women discover how smart they are and how wise they are and how capable they are, and realize that they were resisting the whole time and they were doing what they were supposed to do. You went for help to multiple places. That's what someone smart does.
Yeah.
And you got the wrong information. And once you got the right information, you were able to make good decisions for yourself fairly quickly. And you would have made those decisions earlier if you had the information at that time. But the good news is you did the right thing the entire time. You are so brave and capable and have an amazing life ahead of you.
Sometimes people stay together for their children. He was hurting me. It was hurting my children and my home. My daughter was affected to the point where she has a hard time vocalizing how she feels. She felt something was wrong all along, didn't know what it was. And she learned to stuff her feelings because of that. Sometimes when we think we're doing a justice by not having certain conversations with our children, we're doing them an injustice. And I believe that me finding out about my ex not only saved me, it saved my daughter and helped her to know that she needed to learn to use her voice. It saved my son, who did not understand the dangers of porn. It's a conversation that I can freely have with other people in my family, which is usually a taboo conversation. The conversation is always, this is what boys do. So it's very important to have these conversations. I believe, especially when someone in your family has this addiction, to have this conversation with others, children, and so on.
Yeah, that's so important. Well, Kayla, thank you so much for sharing your story today. I appreciate your bravery and your willingness to share so that other women could benefit from your experience.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me.